We are tonight's entertainment.
You can't handle the truth.
The fire rises.
Pizza time.
You're a wizard, Harry.
So it begins.
You know how much I sacrificed?
You think that's air you're breathing?
Groovy.
I don't have friends. I got family.
We are Sex People! 1, 2, 3, 4!
Craft Services.
Hello, listeners. We're in for a Trentless intro today. Unfortunately, Trent is working on set again, so you're just going to have to listen to what I had to eat most recently. Folks, I unexpectedly went home today after my new Honda Civic broke down because there's some like weird power level warning or something, so then I had to get it towed to a nearby Honda dealership and then went home. And my dad had just made chicken curry, and it was very good. I had it with some rice, and he even gave me some to bring home with me so that I could heat it up for myself. And yeah, it was a good time. But what's an even better time is the intro. Welcome back to Craft Services, where we talk about the movies. Each week we talk about a film and hopefully have a crew member of that film to talk with us about their experience working on the picture. This week we have production designer Francesca Di Mottola. She's worked on a bunch of cool projects, which you're going to hear pretty shortly. And she was super cool and fun to have on the show. I think this is the first David Lowery movie we've ever covered, so I'm pretty excited to have someone on for that. And Francesca is pretty cool herself, and I kind of want to just let you, the listener, listen to her. Cue the interview. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our interview with Francesca Di Mottola. She's the production designer behind such films as The Moment, The Gallerist, and our film for this week, David Lowery's Mother Mary. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here with you.
So just to start off, could you talk about when you first decided you wanted to become a production designer?
There's a very clear moment of me being in London, being completely lost, not knowing what to do with my life. And I was at that time doing a foundation course in art and design, which did not include theater design or film set design at all. That wasn't a thing. And I remember just thinking like, oh my God, I'm really not enjoying this, and slipping out whenever I could just to make the best out of my time studying in London. And I was constantly going to the theater and to watch movies, but like in a very sort of manic way, almost like every single night. And that's when at one point I was, I believe, at the opera, and I was like, oh my God, that was a really like a big aha moment, because I was sitting there at the top gallery with a very cheap ticket and just being completely fascinated. And so that's me at the opera thinking, oh my God, that's there. It's looking at me right face on, like this is what I want to do. So it started as theater design, but anyways, it was something that was all of a sudden like a really strong calling for me, designing for performance in particular, whatever shape that would take. And I think to begin with, I was really fascinated about, you know, the theater as in a black box or a box of sorts with a proscenium arch, and creating something that is completely magical and make-believe within this context. And however, when I then switched and I applied to Central St. Martin's, where they had a theater design course. And when I got in there, we shared a building with the London College of Printing, it was at the time, and which had a film studies course. And so the director, and it was in the same building, although it was like different universities. And then all these directors were doing their first short films, and they were always working, looking for designers to collaborate with. And then I ended up doing that with a group of friends. Every single weekend, we were like helping out on short films. And we established, like, myself and other two friends, like a little sort of design trio, where we would, one of us would be the production designer, and the other ones would work as assistants and help them. And so we just started, like, almost, as I said, every weekend designing movies, short films, and so that sort of quickly became quite ingrained in a way that I like to design. And so, yeah, it kind of very quickly went from theater design to production design, but it was quite of a seamless transition in a way.
And what would you say your first like big break in the industry was for you?
As a designer myself, was working with Luca Guadagnino on I Am Love.
That's a good director.
So I met Luca socially in Rome, and I'd been working in Brazil. I'm half Brazilian. And after college, I moved to Brazil, and I ended up working there for 3 years. And I worked with some really interesting directors, but mainly assisting, so as an art director. And so when we met in Rome. I just remember having this conversation about me having come back from Brazil quite recently and having just wrapped as an art director on a movie by Giulio Bressani, who was a director that Luca really admired. And so I think he was quite taken from that. And he, tomorrow with your portfolio, and I can get you to maybe be part of the art team. I've got a French production designer. And so I did. So we met again more in a sort of more professional way, but it wasn't about me designing the movie. And it wasn't until when and I don't really remember who it was, but his production designer was unable to make the movie, that he just suddenly turned around and offered it to me. So I was absolutely terrified. I was like, no, I'm not ready. I'm totally not ready. I remember having a conversation with some friends of mine who are one is a very talented architect, the other one is an amazing graphic designer. And they said, well, there's no such thing as being ready for something until you throw yourself and do it. So you just can't say no, that there's no chance. So just go for it. And I was like, okay, well, so I met again as my third meeting with Luca was as the production designer of his movie, which I probably wasn't ready for.
But hey, got you here. And speaking of directors, can you talk about meeting David Lowery, and how did Mother Mary sort of come across your radar?
So I knew of David's, I love David's movies. And so when I was sent Mother Mary, I was so excited to read it, but also I knew that I'd met the designer that he'd collaborated with for many, many, many years on many movies, Jade Healy. So I was quite surprised that she wasn't doing it. So it took a while for me to understand, okay, how does it work? Establishing a collaboration with a new director who has worked so long with a designer, and so that was quite scary in a way when we met. And I was very and I think even for the very first weeks when we started collaborating, I was very timid in a way and shy in terms of putting my ideas forward, but I tried my best. And he's such a gentle soul and a very interesting mind, and a very collaborative nature. So quickly it came across as my shyness of taking over someone else's, artistic collaboration wasn't so important. And we had a first great meeting, and then we met in person on Zoom, and then we met in person in London, where I showed up with. So, I mean, I think Mother Mary was just script that immediately conjured so much imagery. So it was very easy to put together a lookbook and explore different ideas from the start. However, the script I read ended up being very different from the script that we then ended up shooting. It was a much more, I think the word can be literal, but the spaces were real spaces. And we sort of, the film opened with Mother Mary in Lausanne room, and she's being fitted. She jumps on a plane. She comes to London. She lands in Heathrow. And then because of many sort of different reasons, as the production continued, it sort of developed into something quite different, I'd say. I mean, the core of the story is completely there. The characters are there. The dialogue didn't change massively, but I think the approach specifically to set design very much changed. So when we first met, I hope I'm not going too off piece from your
No, this
question,
is all great.
It was about our first meeting, right? So when we first met, we discussed how the movie, 75% of the movie took place in one space, which was this very moody atelier workshop within a barn. So he had written that into the script. He wanted the house that Mother Mary first walked into, which was part of Sam Anselm's atelier. It was a very English older house. And then from this house, they walked into this barn, and the barn revealed a whole different workspace that was to be like staged to the unfolding of this whole movie. And so we were both like, and that was very much like where we met immediately in agreement, was like, okay, this is going to be a set build, of course, because we want to control the look of it. We want to be able to remove the ceiling, come in with a crane from the top, and do all sorts of trickeries and a technical approach that would allow a certain sort of freedom in the way he wanted to approach filming. But specifically about the look, he wanted the walls to look really dark and be really moody. And that's where we then quickly had to change our approach, because I think we weren't allowed to have the stage spaces that we needed to make that build happen. We didn't have it long enough. And so just like as it happens in any movie, you sort of come across then the actual practicalities of executing your ideas, and not everything is there at your disposal. And so that clearly, I think from the first week we were together in Germany prepping the movie, I was like, I think that this may not be the build that we were looking for, and that why don't we give it a go and try and find this location, because the time I have with on stage to build is too short, and I probably wouldn't deliver like what the space we had in mind anyways. So David was a little bit like in the beginning worried about this approach, but then we started seeing such amazing locations pop up, and we landed quite quickly in we found this one barn that I think was much more than what we envisaged. And so I don't know if you picked up on the fact that the beams within this barn, like there's these wooden beams which are part of the structure of the barn, we sort of borrow them and they come back as part of other set elements or a connective architectural tissue to other sets. But when I saw the space for the first time, I was really worried that those beams were going to get in the way of certain shots and were going to be obstructive. And then that was actually David who was like, no, actually, I think the beams are fantastic. And they actually create this sort of like foreground opportunity for us. And so I was like, great. So that like was a bit of uncertainty on my part for like 5 minutes. And then they were so much like became such a key element to the look of the movie. And they allowed us, even because we still do spend a lot of time in that barn, they allowed us to sort of create different areas within the barn. So there's a central area where, let's say, we consider that like the main stage where most of the scenes unfolded. But then there's an area which is Sam's working space and creative space with this huge drawing, like this huge table and desk, but like 4 meters long desk and a huge mood board. And then we created a mezzanine just above there where all her fabrics are. So that space is like the creative thinking, researching space for Sam. And I sometimes I was putting myself also into that character and thinking like, when I design, what would I dream of having, like this huge table where I can put all my research and mood board. And then on the other opposite side of the room of this barn, she has the more sort of working fabric cutting table. So it's more where all her tools and all her bits and bobs like
her workspace.
So the workspace, exactly. So we managed to sort of separate these 3 areas, which I thought was interesting. But the barn was very bare. It had no floor. So we found all that reclaimed wood floor, wooden planks that we covered the floor with. And we sourced all the furniture. It's obviously reclaimed and vintage. And that was bought in the Netherlands by my set decorator, Lottie Sana. It was an amazing find. And they managed to buy like loads of rolls of fabric, which was entirely used in the movie to even make like part of the work in progress of the dresses that Sam makes. So, yeah.
Well, I'm sort of surprised that the barn was not a full set just because of how much control I would have thought. I heard that Anne Hathaway and Michaela Cole said that they felt that it was supernatural. Did you have any experience with that?
I definitely felt that it had a special energy, and it's a very old space. So I didn't have any sort of like supernatural, eerie moments in the barn.
Sure.
Actually, quite the opposite. I felt that it had such a good energy, and we all felt very happy. We were working there until very late hours. Obviously, when you're working with a location, there's like limited availability to prep it. So I remember there was like, it's been a while ago because when we did the first part of the movie, we shot the first, it was in 2023. So I'm trying now to recollect all the memories. But no, I mean, from an energetic point of view, for sure, I did feel that it had a really good vibration. But yet again, I didn't get to stay in the castle where I think Michaela, and David at separate moments slept in a tower in this castle. So I think they had a...
Wow, they're living the full experience.
Exactly. I wish I had, but no.
And when you say that the first part was shot in 2023, was the schedule bifurcated in some way?
Yes, of course, the music is such an important part of the movie. So that took a while for, I think, the music to be at a place where it was ready for us to film the concerts. And also our schedule got so packed, so it felt natural to separate the whole concert part. And but yeah, we shot in a few different stages. In time, I mean. And then we went back in 2024, the following summer, and we shot all the concerts. And we also had some pickup scenes, a few scenes to complete within the barn. So that was a full redress. Yeah, I only give it. That's interesting also, because I feel like I felt so at home in that barn. So redressing it just felt so natural. And I've also come from like my previous project before Mother Mary was 3 seasons on the show The Great, where we had built on stages most of those sets. So every season we were going back to those sets, redressing them, revisiting. So I actually felt so comfortable going back the following year to complete the movie. It felt good, it felt right, and it felt an opportunity to make things better, or to digest them and make some little changes or add. Also the archive where Mother Mary walks into, so there's like a lap time where she goes from the barn, and she arrives from LA, she lands, there's the whole first act of the movie within the barn. And then I think there's like a flashback to the concerts. We pick up with her having a shower, getting ready for what is the second act of the movie. And then we find her, she's kind of trying to find her way within this tunnel. And she stumbles across this room, which is Sam's archive. And within this room, there's like boxes with some of her old costumes that Sam had designed for her. And that is where the movie starts going a little bit darker and more eerie. And so that space we shot in phase 2 of the movie. And we actually had, I think, dressed it and shot a little scene in the first phase. But then we went back and we made it more eerie. When you sort of just start to, like, the movie becomes part of you and you understand it better. So that was an actual luxury to go back.
Well, you sort of gave me a perfect segue, because I wanted to ask about building those concert sets, because they seem ginormous, and I can't tell, whether that's camera trickery or like, I don't know what's going on there, if it's visual effects
definitely part of filmmaking, movie magic trickery. So I don't want to go into too much of the specifics because I don't want to ruin your experience of they being grand. That was always like, the concerts, if they existed, they had to exist in they had to take you away so far away from the movie that you had experienced till then, or the different side of the movie, which is like a very intimate, despite like being in this huge space, which is the barn. It's a very intimate movie about 2 characters coming to terms with their relationship. And so I feel like, that was very much in our minds. And I feel like David has brought this up in many interviews now, that Taylor Swift and that scale
eras,
of concert,
right?
The Eras tour, and like was a strong reference. Like I spent over a year researching and referencing for those concerts. So I feel like it was always getting bigger and bigger. And then when you get to the point of like, what actually can we afford, and what it then sort of, you contain and you pare down, because you're not actually staging a whole concert with 3 different phases. But obviously, I think what really helped and I enjoyed a lot was the video content, understanding the video content and what that could add to the scenic element of a concert. And so we created some interesting videos. Part of it were like filming that were projected on the screens, and part of it we had filmed before. So we had time to sort of properly design that context. And there's like a triptych of Mother Mary. I think you see it very quickly in the movie, but like there's one point when she's singing Holy Spirit and she's coming down some steps and the screens open up. So there's the steps in the middle and two screens, and we have a giant Mother Mary profile looking at her as she descends, like the whole sort of religious iconography of like the triptych and the Holy Trinity coming back. And so but also like a bit supernatural of like an out-of-body experience where this huge, almost like soul-like image of Mother Mary is looking at the real Mother Mary descending the steps. So we had fun with that. And I think that helped us create scale also. And then collaborating with people who actually work in the concert world and were there to support us. So we worked with a creative director called Trevor Burke and his team, and he's got a company called Visual Noise Creative. And so, I mean, they came with so much experience, and also Dani Vitale, who was brought on as Annie's choreographer, who did an amazing job with her and her dance piece in the barn and choreography throughout all the concerts. She was also acting as the creative director. So we were also a trio because obviously, and with the cinematographer. So it was like combining a live performance with filmmaking, and until what extent, does the production designer, set designer design a live performance, and where does the lighting designer come in? And, and it's all that, like learning that, because it's a completely different art form and design form to what I do normally, although I come from theater.
What an interview. Thank you so much to Francesca Di Mottola for coming on the show. We really appreciate her coming on. She was a super fun guest. And if you liked this part, fret not, listener. Part 2 is coming out next week on Sunday, as per usual. And we've got, after that, some fun things planned, but not confirmed. So you're just going to have to keep checking our Instagram and our Twitter to keep updated on what the goings on are for craft services. Please make sure to leave a review, rate us 5 stars. We're on every podcasting platform known to man: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher, etc. And tell a friend. It really does help our listenership. And I guess all that leaves is to say adieu, listener.